So there's only one of this in the entire world.
It's the first time you made me something.
I know. Like your present. What's up guys, today is Monday the 21st of April. George's birthday is 5 days from today. I'm trying not to speak very loud so he doesn't hear me because he's in his studio working, and he has really wanted me to make something for him for the longest time, but I've never done menswear like as a whole, so I'm not very confident when it comes to making menswear, but I thought this would be like the perfect surprise for his birthday. His birthday is on Sunday the 26th. So I'm thinking about making like a simple jumper. So this is the first fabric option. It's like a soft camel color. He likes wearing grays, whites, blues, and like beiges. He would really wear red and yellow, but he prefers to stick to like neutral tones. So this is the first one. It's a nice sort of like mid-weight scuba fabric, and it's so soft. He has sensitive skin, so I was really careful picking the fabrics for him. This is the first option. Oh god. And this is the second option. This is like a mustard yellow, and I got 2 meters of each. I couldn't decide which I preferred, but yeah, so the plan is to trace around his favorite jumper. I think I might add some kind of detail to the front, maybe cut out a piece of Ankara and like top stitch it to the front. We'll see how this goes, but the aim is to like get this ready before his birthday on Sunday and then give it to him Sunday morning, and then we can see his reaction together, because I don't plan to actually take any measurements, just to use like his old jumper to do this. So fingers crossed. Today is the following day, and I have successfully stolen one of his fave jumpers. This he wears like to work, at home, and it has a lot like a relaxed slouchy fit. It has like a normal sleeve, but like a drop shoulder, because his shoulders are kind of rounded. So I'm going to trace around the front, the back, and the sleeve. I'm also going to make like a collar piece and a cuff and a hem piece to go at the bottom. I think my prayer is that he doesn't actually walk into the studio and go, "Oh babe, what are you doing with my jumper?" Because I don't know what I will say if he comes and asks me that. So I'm just going to quickly trace out the patterns and then start working on the jumper. This video is going to have 3 main parts. The first part, we trace around the jumper to create the patterns. The second part, we cut and we sew. And then the third part, actually give it as a gift. So first up, I'm just tracing around the front panel, which I folded in half, tucks the bottom and the sleeve in, and then I'm going to go in and refine the lines and add a 1 centimeter seam allowance all the way around. I also drop the neckline by about 1 centimeter or ½ an inch, so that allows me to attach the collar piece later on. So just take note of the width of the bodice and the length as well, because you want the front to match the back. So I'm just going ahead to repeat the same thing on the back of the jumper. I folded it in half, pinned in the sides and the sleeve so I can comfortably trace around it with a pencil before going back in to refine the lines with a marker pen, adding my seam allowance all the way around, and we're going to be cutting the front and the back on a fold. So don't forget to also cross check that the side seams actually match, the shoulders match, and the width of the bodice of the front and the back are the same. So once you're happy with that pattern, you can go ahead and cut it out along the edge of the seam allowance, so you have the back ready to cut onto fabric. So the next piece you need to work on is tracing out the sleeve, and I folded the sleeve in such a way that we're tracing out the back side like so. I'm just tracing along the side and marking that midpoint on the hem and on the sleeve head. Then I am going to use a pin to sort of transfer the point where that arm curve sits on the jumper. So placing these pins like this from the fabric into the paper piece, I am going to lift the sleeve slightly and then use a pencil to mark those points where the pin actually punctures through the fabric and the paper. So I'm going in now to connect those points together using my pattern master and my marker pen. I've drawn in the arm curve as well as the side seam, and then I'm going to flip the sleeve to reveal the reverse side of the sleeve piece, and I'm going to be tracing along the side using a pencil first, marking that underarm, and then I'm going to use some pins to transfer the sleeve curve onto paper. So once I put in these pins here like so, I'm going to lift it slightly and then mark those points with my pencil. So once I have the points marked, I can connect them together so I have the shape for this other side to create a full sleeve piece. After adding my seam allowances, my notches and annotations, I went ahead to also plan the cuff piece which sits underneath the sleeve, and the dimension is written on the screen. I also went ahead to plan the collar piece which goes around the neckline and is about 51 centimeters by 8 centimeters. I also planned the waistband piece which goes on the hem of the jumper. So as for the dimensions, I have just put them all together here. So if you're following these measurements, it's a whole lot easier for you to just take note of these and then create a pattern with these dimensions as well. So after doing all of this, I went in to draw in an extra piece that will become an epaulette or a shoulder detail, and I put together the shoulder lines or the shoulder seams, traced around it like so, and it's about 6 centimeters or 2 inches wide. So after doing this, I just took that piece off, added my seam allowances around, cut out all the necessary piece, and you should end up with about 7 pieces for the jumper. So I have cut all of my pattern pieces. I ended up with 7 bits. The only thing I added that I didn't plan to add was this piece that would sit across the shoulder like this. I just thought adding some kind of color or texture to the jumper would make it, I don't know, more special. I'm using this fabric to do that. It has just enough shine to just jazz up the jumper without being too much. I'm just going to put the detail here and there. I just decided to cut the pattern so I don't have to think about like dimension and all whatnot. So I'm going to go ahead and cut these pieces in fabric and get to sewing them all together. So I'm going in now to cut out my pieces, cutting out my back, my front, as well as the other smaller bits that I need. And these are all of my pieces here. I decided on this soft beige fabric because it's a lot more neutral compared to the other mustard one. So once you have all of your pieces, don't forget to cut your notches as well, and then we can go ahead and actually start sewing. So with sewing, I started off by joining up the shoulder seams, putting right sides together, and I'm going to be sewing on a 1 centimeter seam allowance using a normal straight stitch on my domestic machine. After doing this, I gave both seams a nice press to relax the stitching, and then I'm going to be attaching the shoulder piece or the epaulette. So I added a 1 centimeter seam allowance on both sides, and I'm just folding this inwards like so and adding some pins to keep it flat. If pressing this would make it a lot easier for you, then go ahead and do so. But I'm going to take this to my machine and I'm going to top stitch that detail into the shoulder on a tiny 0.2 centimeter seam allowance. You will need to sew both shoulder details on both sides of the shoulder of the jumper. Give it a nice press before going in to join your sleeve into the armhole. So I'm joining the sleeve on a flat, which means I am going to be sewing it like this before joining up the side seams. So I've just pinned the head of the sleeve into the armhole of the jumper, and I'm going to be sewing everything into place. Because this fabric has stretch, it was a lot more forgiving to actually sew the sleeve into the armhole of the jumper because you could easily pull and stretch parts that you had to ease into place. So after doing this for the left hand side, I did it for the right as well, and then I'm going to be sewing up the side seam of the sleeve down to the side seam of the actual jumper itself. So I'm done stitching up the side seam of the sleeve and bodice all together, and this is what the top is looking like. I'm actually very happy with this shoulder detail here. I think my only concern is it looks a little bit feminine, but I don't want to jump to conclusions. I just want to finish it and actually give it to him and let him try it on and see what it looks like on his body. But I don't know, something about it is just very feminine. Maybe I'm just being short-sighted. Next up, I'm going to join the side seam of the waistbands. I'm going to do this for both sides, press them nice and flat, and then turn it in such a way that we put the wrong sides together, so we only have the clean finished seam on the side. I have pinned this into the hem of the jumper and we're going to be stitching it in place. So because the waistband is slightly smaller than the hem, you would need to pull a little bit as you sew. So you would need to stretch that waistband as you sew to fit the hem of the jumper. And what that does is it creates this really nice balloony shape on the bottom of the jumper. After that, I'm going to work the cuff into the sleeve hem, first up by stitching up that side like so. So we have a tunnel that when we fold it together like this, just like we did for the waistband, we can attach the cuff into the hem of the sleeve. So I'm just passing it through like so, putting side seams together, and we're going to sew the cuff into the hem of the sleeve the same way we did with that waistband, stretching and sewing so that both ends actually meet. And because this fabric has stretch, it's forgiving and a little bit easier to sew compared to if it was like a stiff woven fabric. So I'm just finishing up this cuff seam like so. I would need to repeat this for the other side. So we have both cuffs of the jumper finished and ready. It's just a really cool way to finish off hems if you don't want to like leave them as like a normal folded edge. Last up, I'm going to be working on the collar piece. First up, I need to stitch close that open end, and after doing that, we're going to attach that circular shape into the neckline of the jumper. So I'm going to fold it in half like this, and then starting from the center back, I like to always pin pieces like this first before I go to sew, but if you have tried and tested and are sure that the dimensions work, then you can just sew in one go. But I've pinned the collar piece into the neckline of the jumper, and I'm going to go ahead and stitch this in place. The collar should be slightly smaller by about 1 inch or 1.5 inches compared to the width of the neckline of the jumper, because that stretching of the collar piece would allow it to sit flat on the neck of the garment. So after doing that, you can overlock the seams if you want. It's not really necessary because this fabric is knitted, so it doesn't have any fraying edges, but I just wanted to finish it nicely at the end. With the valley she died with the shadows Davida. Woo! Happy birthday, baby!
Thank you.
Okay. The moment of truth. Go on. You don't know what it is.
It's a piece of clothing.
You don't know that. It could be a blanket, it could be towel, it could be a cover for your computer. You don't know that.
True.
So there's only one of this in the entire world.
You made it?
Open it.
You make me hands.
Just open it.
You made me a shirt?
Yes.
Beige.
It was the only color option that, you know, I was sure you would like.
That's nice. It's the first time you made me something.
I know.
Thank you.
You're welcome, baby. Put it on, put it on, put it on. Oh, God. like your present. It's a video. Do you like the jumper?
Yeah, I think it's really nice. It's so soft.
The summer, because it's a light color.